Okay, this is my oral presentation of my project on Romanticism and the Gothic movement. So, part 1. What is Romanticism? Romanticism is a movement that started in Europe and entered America in 1818 with To a Waterfowl by William Cullen Bryant. Major themes in Romanticism are the beauty of nature, emotion, closeness to God, as well as things like sense of self, and it tends to be very personal in the way of the things that are being written about, and the characters that you are hearing about often are very personal with how they with the narration and how they are presented. You really get into the heads of these characters, and it feels very close. It's very often there are themes of the beauty of the frontier and how how the natural world is this new and gorgeous thing for America, especially. And there's often a very detailed style of prose that is used in these works. Dark Romanticism, on the other hand, is another term for Gothic literature, and instead of the beauty and lights that are often talked about in traditional Romanticism, there is gloom and danger, and um, and often a lot more supernatural elements brought in. It feels a lot darker, which makes sense. There's the same detail in the prose and the style of writing, and it still feels very personal and like you're in the heads of these characters. Famous Romanticism and Gothic writers. A couple famous writers from this time period are William Cullen Bryant, who one of his works is what I ended up reading, Edgar Allan Poe, who I also ended up reading for this, Washington Irving, who I did not read any of his pieces for this specifically, but I have read The Legend of Sleepy Hollow before, and I really like his work. And then James Fairmore Cooper, who did not write anything that I have read, but did write the leather stocking. I forgot the name of it. I forgot the full name of it. But he did write a series of very prominent Romanticism books. The works that I read. I read The Raven and The Cast of Amontillado by Edgar Allan Poe and A Forest Hymn by William Cullen Bryant. The tones are very different. You can very much tell the difference in Romanticism versus Dark Romanticism in these books. In The Raven, there is a lot of talk of holy things and the dead, with the Raven being described as a prophet, Lenore, and mentions of Eden, which is, as far as I know, another term for the Garden of Eden. It's a very dark and a very creepy atmosphere, and the writing style is very detailed with a lot of repetition, and it really just adds to this feeling of not really knowing if this is real. It has a very unreal feeling to it. The Cast of Amontillado, also very creepy and detailed writing style, and there's also a lot of repetition. He keeps mentioning these bells that are on Fortunato's costume, and that really stood out to me. And there's a lot of just small details that keep getting brought up. And A Forest Hymn has a lot of talk about God and nature, and is very detailed writing again. And instead of repetition in the words used, or a repetition of one thing happening over and over. There's a lot of repetition of ideas, and there's expansion every time that an idea is repeated. Like, there's a lot of talk about trees and their holiness, and it starts with just being it was the first place where one would worship God before we had buildings, and then it goes on to God made these trees and planted this forest, and it is special because he chose it to be there. And then it goes on to describe trees as a holy thing specifically, and that was just very interesting to me, and I thought that it was worth pointing out. And thus, here's my timeline. I'm not going to read it all out, so I'm just going to pause here. Leather stocking tails. That's the last word. So the leather stocking tails is what I was talking about earlier with James Fairmore Cooper. Romanticism to Transcendentalism. So Transcendentalism directly followed Romanticism, and it has a lot of more nationalist themes, a much greater focus on God, and even greater focus on individualism. It's instead of about the beauty of nature, it's more about the beauty of God. There is a lot of influence from Romanticism in the writing. And that is it.